With the midterms coming up, there's an increasing amount of focus on election security. How do we know that the paper ballots we cast are going to be counted accurately and won't just be thrown away or miscounted by corrupt election officials? And how do we know that the digital voting machines we use aren't being manipulated at some level to influence or change or totally discard the results? Thankfully, there are auditing procedures and election supervision strategies in place that do a pretty good job of preventing corruption once the votes have been cast. But the American voting system has a huge weak point. In many cases, we have no idea who's voting in our elections. The problem is that the US does not federally require any form of identification to be shown before voting in federal elections. Election security is largely the responsibility of states and localities, and in many of these areas, corruption runs rampant. We've heard some truly embarrassing excuses from the left about why they lost in 2016. Oh, some Russians ran a few $1,000s in Facebook ads, and we're supposed to believe this is evidence of our democracy being totally hacked? No, that's nothing more than grasping at straws. The real manipulation of the democratic process, the real threat and risk of hacking, as they say, comes, unsurprisingly, from the left. As much as they claim to be sovereign defenders of our democracy, when you dig a little deeper, you'll find they aren't really standing up for the sanctity of voting for the people like you and me. No, they see us as the problem. When they talk about our democracy, they're talking about using any means necessary to tip elections nationwide in their favor. Illegality be damned. Today's video will focus on 3 ways the left is hacking our elections. I use the term hacking not because they're literally sitting there punching in computer code or something, but because that's the term that has entered the lexicon and it's a frequent topic of discussion. We'll talk first about illegal aliens voting, then about cases of voter fraud, and finally how the left is using intimidation and violence to suppress conservative turnout. But first, a new mobile game I think you'll enjoy. What's up everybody, let's talk about a brand new mobile game I think you'll enjoy. Vikings War of Clans was inspired by the famous RPG and strategy games of the 90s like StarCraft and Age of Empires, the games that my generation grew up playing. What makes the Vikings world so addictive is that more than 20 million online players that are constantly changing the way the game evolves, with never-ending fighting over resources, forging new alliances, and competing in live events, battle for territory and resources, and a constantly changing, rich PvP environment, all from your phone. No powerful PC or console needed. The game features great design and graphics, immersive MMORPG gameplay, clan battles, live events, competitions, and more. Support my channel by downloading Vikings for free only from my links below in the description box, and get the special bonus of 200 gold coins and the protective shield bonus. Download and start playing today, you won't regret it. Click that link right down below to download and start playing today. The first form of election hacking is one of the most obvious. The left is actively encouraging and incentivizing illegal aliens, people in the country illegally, to vote in our elections. Some of you may be asking yourself, wow, why would they be doing that? Well, the answer is pretty clear. According to research from Pew Research Institute, illegal aliens, despite not having the right to vote, overwhelmingly identify as Democrats and support left-wing policies. The children of illegal aliens, as they become citizens due to our failed birthright citizenship policy, vote overwhelmingly, approximately 80%, for the left. This is why programs like DACA are being pushed so hard by Democrats, and by Republicans that are actually leftists in disguise. They know that if we continue importing illegal aliens and giving their children the right to vote, America will shortly become a permanently left-wing country. Venezuela, essentially. And now, here's the proof. First, from Texas. Texas Dems ask non-citizens to register to vote. Send applications with citizenship box pre-checked. According to the Washington Times, quote, the Texas Democratic Party asked non-citizens to register to vote, sending out applications to immigrants with the box citizenship already checked yes, according to new complaints filed Thursday asking prosecutors to see what laws may have been broken. The Public Interest Legal Foundation alerted district attorneys and the Federal Justice Department to the pre-checked applications, and also included a signed affidavit from a man who said some of his relatives, who are not citizens, received the mailing. This is how the Texas Democratic Party is inviting foreign influence in an election in a federal election cycle, said Logan Churchwell, spokesman for the PILF, a group that's made its mark policing states' voter registration practices. The Texas Secretary of State's office said it, too, had gotten complaints both from immigrants and from relatives of dead people who said they got mailings asking them to register. Now, you may say, this doesn't matter because surely the state systems would have picked up on these people not being citizens. Well, maybe, but maybe not. As we know, Social Security theft is a huge problem with the illegal alien community. According to the Immigration Reform Law Institute, between 2012 and 2016, there are approximately 39 million tax filings where names and Social Security numbers on W-2 tax forms do not match the corresponding Social Security records. Just this week, there was another high-profile case where a Dominican national, Carlos Jose Portes Cortez Ortiz, previously deported for dealing drugs, was arrested for Social Security identity theft. From townhall.com, quote, at the time of his arrest, Cortez Ortiz was found to be in the possession of a Rhode Island Neighborhood Health Plan card, a Rhode Island EBT card for SNAP benefits, a Rhode Island identification card, a Puerto Rican driver's license, and a bank debit card, some depicting his photograph, but all in names other than his own. This means that by using someone else's social security information, he was able to sign up for a myriad of programs. If he'd wanted to, he could have easily registered to vote. And in states without voter ID laws, such as my home state, Washington, he could have easily participated in local and federal elections as a previously deported criminal alien. And now a story from California, where 1,500 non-citizens may have been registered to vote in a California DMV error, according to ABC News. Quote, more than 1,000 non-citizens may have been registered to vote in California after a processing error, according to officials. The Department of Motor Vehicles admitted Monday a mistake that caused as many as 1,500 non-citizens being registered to vote in the state. The agency was alerted to the mistake when Randall Marquis, a Canadian citizen and legal permanent resident in the U.S., went to the LA Times to tell them about receiving a piece of mail from the DMV saying he was registered to vote. The error occurred when DMV technicians processed consumer requests at field offices to change voter eligibility responses on driver's license applications, the letter continued. Due to the order in which the change was processed, the customer's initial responses were retained instead of the correct and revised responses. For their part, the California state government claims this was all accidental, and they claim that no undocumented immigrants were affected by the accidental registration. Of course, there's no way of verifying whether or not that's actually true, and as states like California and Washington continue to blur the lines between citizens and non-citizens by issuing things like driver's licenses, things like this will become inherently more risky. And our third story about voter registration comes from Georgia. The Democratic candidate for governor there is Stacey Abrams, a proud black woman. At a recent campaign rally, she had the following to say about the so-called blue wave that Dems expect to sweep the nation.
But the thing of it is, the blue wave is African American. It's white, it's Latino, it's Asian Pacific Islander. It is disabled. It is differently abled. It is LGBTQ. It is law enforcement. It is veterans. It is made up of those who've been told that they are not worthy of being here. It is comprised of those who are documented and undocumented. It is comprised of those who are documented and undocumented.
Intersectionality intensifies. How can you possibly explain this one away? The blue wave, according to Abrams, you heard it here first, is comprised of those who are told they shouldn't be here, and the undocumented. Their words, not ours. This Freudian slip is important, though, because it reveals to be true what many people have been warning about for a while now. They're actively courting and depending on illegal aliens to be an integral part of the new base of the Democratic Party. The new Democrat Party only cares about Americans if you check the diversity and disability boxes Abrams was talking about. If you're not diverse, as they say, the Democrats see you as the enemy. All the while, they see illegal aliens as one of their core constituencies. San Francisco already allows illegal aliens to vote in their school elections, and I'm sure that when these same aliens get their ballots to vote for the governor and Senate, it'll be explained away as another DMV error. So, we see the Democrat effort to involve and enable illegal aliens and ineligible non-citizens to vote in our elections. They know they'll vote Democrat, and that's why they're trying their best, wherever they can, to get their votes counted. The next way they're trying to hack our elections is through more traditional voter fraud. This story comes to us again from Texas. From Breitbart.com, 4 North Texas women, allegedly members of an organized voter fraud ring, were indicted on 30 felony counts of voter fraud following an investigation by the Texas Attorney General. According to the Texas AG, this scam involved fraudulently submitting voter registration forms. Apparently, this scam targeted elderly voters in Fort Worth. The scammers received mail-in ballots addressed to the victims and used those ballots to vote in the 2016 election. The 4 women arrested are Leticia Sanchez Tepichin, Maria Solis, and Laura Parra. According to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the criminal indictments indicate that the fraud largely affected the 2016 Democratic primary election. Voter fraud is unfortunately widespread in this country, which is why it's so great that states like Georgia are taking proactive measures to purge old, antiquated, and invalid voters from their voter rolls. You aren't automatically unregistered when you die or move out of state, and Georgia is making it so that if you don't vote or make contact with voting authorities in 4 years, you're automatically unregistered, and that is a great move for election security. And now, the third way Democrats are hacking the election: brute force. The violence and mob tactics that we've seen coming from the left in recent weeks and months show no signs of letting up. the congressional baseball shooting last summer, where an unhinged leftist tried to assassinate Rand Paul, Steve Scalise, and others, that was just the beginning. In late September, Ted Cruz and his wife were forced out of a restaurant by an angry leftist mob. They occupied the lobby of the Supreme Court with their angry, yelling, screaming mob. And just a few days ago, Republican Minnesota State Representative Sarah Anderson was punched by a man who was destroying Republican yard signs. He chased her to her car and told her to KYS. Shane Meekland, running for State House in Minnesota, was sucker punched in the head by a leftist while campaigning at a restaurant. He was punched in the head, fell to the ground, and he suffered memory loss and a concussion as a result. Susan Collins of Maine, who cast the deciding vote in Kavanaugh's nomination, was mailed an envelope that allegedly contained the deadly poison ricin. And this isn't even mentioning the deployment of Antifa, the foot soldiers of global capital and the American left, who have been sent out to attack and harass white people and Republicans. At the Trump rally I was at on Thursday, as people were leaving, there was an Antifa photographer posted up taking pictures of everyone leaving the rally. Families, kids, everything. All of this is an attempt at voter suppression. They're attempting to scare Trump voters into silence and make people afraid that if they vote for Trump or other Republicans, there will be negative, violent consequences. The left is trying to build a culture of fear, and their intended victims are people like you and me. Through their attacks and threats of violence against right-wingers, conservatives, and white people, they're attempting to suppress your voice. The normalization of anti-white violence should be concerning to us all. I don't want to live in a country where any racial group is attacked for their race. And as a white man with a white wife who plans on having white kids, I'm especially interested in making sure that violence against white people in America doesn't become accepted by the mainstream. So let's review. When the left rattles on about supposed Russian election hacking or something like that, in the meantime, there are some very real attempts to influence our American elections. Obviously, there are other factors at play here that I didn't dive too deeply into today. One of those is immigration. I've talked extensively about that in other videos though, and you can find them on my channel. The short version of that story is that every racial group in America, except whites, votes for the left. And this is part of why the Democrats and the coastal media elites want to continue bringing in millions of immigrants from the third world every year. They know that as America gets browner, America gets bluer. Additionally, text censorship is another element to election manipulation. If you can manipulate what people see, you can manipulate how they vote and behave. But I wanted this video to focus on actual voter fraud and suppression. By trying to get illegal aliens to vote, committing open voter fraud, and creating a culture of mob violence aimed at white people and Republicans, the Democrats are doing more to destructively manipulate our election system than Republicans and Russia ever could.